Yes, welcome in. The Wisconsin Badgers officially have a starting quarterback, Jesse.
Yes, they do, and it was exactly where we thought it was headed. But at least after practice on Wednesday, we had an opportunity to talk to the top two quarterbacks as well as offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach Phil Longo. And Phil said he knew the question was coming, and at least he provided the answer that Tyler Van Dyke is the starting quarterback, which we basically knew was going to happen when we saw Sunday night scrimmage in Platteville, and he was the only one handling the one reps. But at least it's official now.
Yes, and we'll talk all about it, get into what it means, and also what it means for Braedyn Locke moving forward, what it means for the quarterback room in general, because Phil Longo also talked about the future of the room a little bit. We'll get into practice from Wednesday, where we got to see a little bit of why Tyler Van Dyke is Wisconsin's starting quarterback with some of the throws that he was able to make. And we'll touch on some other things that happened at practice today as well. Before we do, just a reminder that Home Field is the official apparel sponsor of the camp. They are absolutely the best when it comes to that vintage college gear that you're looking for. And they are back in a big way this month with their Can't Miss Kickoff 2024 campaign. It features these platinum football boxes with new gear. There's 3 new shirts for Wisconsin, including a sweatshirt. They also have a hat, really nice looking hat, if I say so myself. You can check out that box up on homefield.com. And if you use the code Bucky24, you can get 15% off your first purchase. All right. So Wisconsin has a starting quarterback. It is Tyler Van Dyke. It's what we expected. We learned today that he was named the starter back on Sunday. So when we said after practice that Tyler Van Dyke was apparently going to, I shouldn't say we, when I said apparently Van Dyke is going to be the starter, apparently he was, and we already knew it. And Luke Fickell was a little, maybe not truthful. No, I'm kidding. But Wisconsin does have a starting quarterback in Tyler Van Dyke, and this is always the way we thought it was going to go. But I thought it's not like it was given to him. I thought he did earn it through what he did in the end of spring, and certainly what we've seen maybe the last 4 or 5 practices here in fall camp.
Both quarterbacks had every opportunity to show what they could do, and Tyler pulled ahead for the reasons that we've laid out throughout this preseason. You can't deny the arm talent that he has, the big arm, the ability for him to throw the ball into a small window, even if it's late, and still get it there. You can't deny the running ability in the RPO game, which to me that's the thing that stood out the most, even dating back to the spring, that I did not necessarily expect. And I know that Luke said that in the spring, that he really started to resemble the quarterback that he was from a physical standpoint and ability to run that he showed in 2021 when he was ACC Rookie of the Year. But that gave the defense a lot of problems. And I was talking to tight end Riley Nowakowski after practice on Wednesday, and he said he was having conversations with guys on the defense, even though they are so far into fall camp that they basically know the plays or have at least some understanding of what's coming. It's still very difficult to keep them honest when you want to sell out and then all of a sudden Tyler's tucking the ball and he's going around the edge for a big gain. So I do think that's going to be a big component of Wisconsin's offense in the RPO game this season. And the other thing that's worth mentioning is, why did Braedyn Locke have an advantage coming in, dating back to the spring? His knowledge, his understanding of the offense, the fact that he had a year in the system. And Phil Longo mentioned that Tyler Van Dyke has certainly done a lot to close that gap and get to a level that was pretty even. So Tyler's absolutely earned this job, and now he's got to go and lead this team to some wins and some very big games.
And he's going to have an opportunity for a lot of big games. But when you think about what separated him from Braedyn, it was the arm, right? I mean, when it comes down to it, I know the legs certainly, and his ability now kind of being on not the same level as Braedyn, intellectually and knowing the offense in and out, but at least being close. It's the arm, and we saw that a bunch today. There was this throw, a late. I don't want to call it a late throw, but it was really a third down to CJ Williams, where Jonas Taclona was right there and he just missed it, and CJ was down on the ground and caught it for a first down. That's a throw that, if we're being fair, Braedyn Locke can't make. And I think that is sort of the arm strength and sort of the arm ability that lends itself to why he has been named the starter and why Wisconsin went out and got him.
I think the offense the last several days has looked a lot better, and the caveat here is a lot of that action is coming against guys who are considered second teamers, but they still got to go out and execute. And everything looks a little bit more comfortable and confident from Tyler, which he even addressed after practice as well. That when he got there in the spring, I believe he said it was a little rocky from the standpoint of just getting the rhythm down and the timing with wide receivers, understanding everything. And as he has gone along here, he's just gotten better and better. And so, yeah, there were some distinct characteristics that he possesses that allowed him to separate.
What did you think about some of the throws that he did make today? I think there was that one that I'm thinking about to CJ Williams, and eventually led to a touchdown to Will Pauling, a wide open Will Pauling in the red zone, but that ended up getting intercepted. But it was an absolute dart from Van Dyke to Will Pauling. It was between three, but it was a very catchable ball. It was a ball that he should have caught. It's just I continue to come back to it, and I know that maybe I'm hammering it home again, but those are just throws that maybe even Tanner Mordecai is not making. That those guys are being, have to expect the ball at any time because it could be coming with that type of arm and that him trusting his arm to that level.
If Tyler Van Dyke puts all these traits we're talking about together and can consistently do that in games, then I think Wisconsin has a chance against the best teams on its schedule. And I'm not saying that they're going to win, but I think they obviously have to be executing at a pretty close to perfect level. No one is perfect to give them a chance, but that starts with Van Dyke. It does feel like he's trending in the right direction, though, in my mind, to be more of the quarterback that people remember him by 3 years ago. His whole career has been filled with so many ups and downs that I think what he showed the last 2 years and even last year maybe lends itself to have people think that's who he is. And he's injury free. He's quicker. He's throwing it really well. And those are all good things going into this season.
Look, I'm not saying he's perfect by any stretch. I know it feels like right there you were trying to tamp down a little bit like what you were expect of him because you don't necessarily know. And we know what happened last year. Does that play a little bit of a role in the way that you're thinking and the way you're talking right now?
I think everything does. How much hype there was going into last season. I mean, it does. It really feels like things are operating much more smoothly this preseason, but it's all coming against Wisconsin. And in some of these instances, it's coming against guys that are going to get a handful of reps in games. Not all. Obviously, they've got a really talented two deep defensively, too. And then there's also just the Van Dyke's career factor where you don't necessarily know what you're going to see. But he's gotten better and better. And it just feels like this bodes really well for what's possible for this offense when you're getting to 2-3 weeks out before the opener.
Yeah, I mean, we're a little over 2 weeks, 16 days until they face Western Michigan. We've got 3 more practices open to the media. Let's transition here and talk about Braedyn, because I think in the year or the year and a half, I guess, yeah, I mean, the year that we've known him, year and a half we've known him and the way that he's talked to the media, I don't know that he's ever been as short and low key and just not necessarily open on exactly what he was wanting to say today. You can tell he's disappointed, and I'm wondering, and who wouldn't be, right? Like, I totally understand that disappointment, but he's certainly talking differently now than he did in the spring or, last year when he was the number 2 and it was, Tanner Mordecai's show. But disappointment, I think, is probably the biggest word. But I was a little, I don't know, maybe caught off guard with how low key he was and how disappointed he was. And I guess you could use the word angry, though that may be a little bit too far.
The way I would put it is the disappointment was dripping off him during that less than 4-minute session with reporters after practice Wednesday. Like, it was radiating off of him in a way that made me wonder whether he just found out today, whether he was not going to be the starting quarterback. And when I asked Tyler afterward when he found out, like you said, it was Sunday morning in Platteville. So that means that Braedyn presumably would have learned at the same time and has had a few days to sit with this. I think it speaks to a couple different things. One, the competitive nature that he has. He's pissed. There's no other way to put it. And while Tyler did everything to earn the job, I think it also speaks to the fact that Braedyn felt like he had a pretty solid camp, and no one wants to be number two. Now, if you look at last season, you know that there's no guarantees in anything. And all it's going to take is one play that goes awry, and Braedyn will be the guy. I do think Phil Longo, and he mentioned this, feels like if they had to start Braedyn Locke, if he was going into the season as the starter, the staff would feel pretty comfortable with that. You probably wouldn't feel all that comfortable with where you were at in your backup situation. But I mean, there's no other way to put it. I think he's mad at himself and disappointed in the situation, but certainly I imagine can understand why they've gone in this direction, you would think. But he's a competitor and he's pissed. And that's where it stands.
And it draws me back to a conversation we had with him before fall camp started. And it was, he said to my time, there's urgency in this camp. And I asked him why there was urgency. And he goes, there's urgency because of where I'm at in my career and, wanting to be the guy and want to be the starter. And now that urgency, certainly was there, but and his play was solid, but it wasn't good enough. And now he's kind of a backup for another year. Again, as Phil Longo said at the end, our starter for now, right? Who knows what happens with injury-wise, play-wise. Braedyn Locke has to be ready. He was ready last year to play. I think I should say he was mentally ready to play. I don't know that he was ready physically, and I don't think Wisconsin's offense is ready to have a redshirt freshman with so many other new faces everywhere else to be able to run it. But I asked you this off the air, and I'm going to ask you now. You got that little sly grin on your face. If the transfer portal open right now, would Braedyn Locke be in it?
No, I don't believe so. I think there's a difference between being pissed off at the situation and examining what the big picture long-term can be here. And the reason that I say that is we know this is Tyler's last year of eligibility. And if we're just going to spin this forward, because that's part of this story as well, who is better positioned to be the starter among the guys that are on the roster, presumably next season, than Braedyn? The question is, and this is something that I don't think anybody can answer, even though I know Phil was asked about this, is whether they happen to go the transfer portal route again if somebody should leave and there is an opening. But if we just look at the roster as currently constructed, you'd have Braedyn, you'd have maybe Matire, Cola Crew, and obviously the other scholarship quarterback who would be coming in is Landon Locke, Braden's younger brother, which I think would be a pretty damn cool experience for both those guys to be on the same team. And I don't think there's anybody that would be capable of challenging Braedyn. But that would be a big question is, what if somebody leaves, or what if the staff decides that there's someone out there who could be better and could challenge Braedyn and could take the starting job? If that were to happen a third time, then all bets are off. I just think that he's still going to have 2 years of eligibility. If you went somewhere else, you're going to have to compete for the job. There'd be no guarantees there, and he'd be better positioned long-term here. So again, I certainly understand the disappointment, and this was a different version of Braedyn than I've ever seen in the opportunities we've had to talk to him. But for his long-term future, it does still seem like a good situation for Wisconsin. And I also think Wisconsin is going to need Braedyn Locke at some point.
Yeah, I mean, when's the last time they've only used one quarterback an entire year?
I think we've had this discussion a handful of times. 2019, when Jack Cohn played despite rolling up his ankle. 2017, when Alex Hornibrook had a really good season, and very infrequently otherwise during my time on the beat. Russell Wilson obviously did in 2011, but you can go back through the years, man. 2012, it was supposed to be Danny O'Brien, and then it was Joel Stave, and then you had Stave get hurt, and there was Kurt Phillips. Obviously, we had the Tanner McAvoy, Joel Stave debacle in 2014, and Bart Houston split time with Alex Hornibrook. Again, every year has its own set. Graham Mertz couldn't stay healthy in a lot of those seasons, so it happens a lot.
Yes, it's a lot. So eventually, you're probably going to need him. I'm of the same opinion. I don't think that if it was open, he'd go, because there's nowhere to go. Like right now, go someplace else and start. This is still the best spot for him right now. And who knows, that'll still be the case in December when the portal does open. But you're right, he does have his little brother coming in, and Phil Longo mentioned him today, not by name, of course, but said we got a good one coming in. And then they also have Jaron Mock in the 2026 class right now. That's kind of the future of the room. But I also found it interesting that Phil Longo was mentioning, the transfer portal. If Luke decide, like that's Luke Fickell's decision whether to go after a quarterback in the portal or not. Is that how you took it? That's how I took it.
Yeah, ultimately, that the head coach makes those decisions, and Phil said it in general with the portal is they're going to go based on where they feel their most immediate needs are. But ultimately, if the head coach decides, I don't like what we have at quarterback enough, and there's someone out there that I think we can get, we've seen it from the staff. They're going to do it at every position they can. So I'm certainly not going to sit here and be naive in August and say when December gets here and the portal opens that they're just going to stand pat. You It's a wait and see game. And Luke obviously said it on Sunday night in Platteville after practice that he would love to build from within. That's the ideal scenario. Phil feels the same way, but you can't make that absolute guarantee right now because you don't know what's going to happen or who will be available or who will even stay on the roster when you get to that point.
It's always going to be changed. It's going to continue to be changed every single year as long as the transfer portal is the way that it is. And I don't imagine it certainly not going away. I don't imagine it changing a whole lot either. Is there anything else you wanted to add on the quarterbacks at all? I know you're going to be writing about them.
I mean, we've certainly covered the top two. I've gotten some questions about Maber Matire, and he's exclusively gone with the threes. I think that's always a tough spot because you're working with a third team line. A lot of those guys are not going to see the field this year. And so, but from the top two, we've pretty much covered it. Maber's done some good things, but he's a very young guy and has a ways to go.
Let's transition into a couple other things that happened at practice today. And you can tell me if I'm wrong. We did not stand each other during practice. So I don't know if you feel the same way about some of the things that I saw. Ches Malusi has kind of ratcheted up his workload here these last few days. And I thought he's looking more explosive than he did in the spring. I don't know if he's all the way back to what he was last year, but he looks more explosive. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, certainly from this preseason.
That's a no. That was a no.
If it's relative to what we've seen this preseason, it's hard I don't remember what I had for lunch 2 days ago. So if I'm trying to compare what he was in the spring, I think a lot of people were just surprised that he was out there in the spring because Fickell had mentioned previously that we weren't going to see him a ton. But the fact that he was even out there for the scrimmage on Sunday night says that it's trending in the right direction for him. You just got to be able to keep him healthy because the other thing that's noticeable is they're still going live and they're still on occasion dropping dudes to the ground, including Malusi, including Walker. So you just got to get him to the opener. But I do think he and Walker are going to be a pretty dynamic 1-2 tandem.
There was a scary one today, I thought, right around the goal line where Ches got pulled back and his leg went away that I didn't think it was supposed to go. And I thought it was, he jumped right up and there was no problem. He just was fine. But I think everybody on the field is probably holding their breath at that moment. Just because he's been so snake bitten, I think is the term there. I'm not going to say injury prone because as he said, they're different injuries, but snake bitten by injuries for sure. And you're just trying to get him to August 30th, right? And get him into a game and see what can happen. The other thing that also continues to stand out is they can say what they want about getting the ball to other people all they want. When it comes to third down, Will Pauling is still that dude. Will Pauling is still that dude. And you go and look at some of the throws that Tyler Van Dyke has made, especially on third down. Will Pauling is more often than not the guy that he's going to. And I don't envision that changing, even if they want to spread the ball out to everybody else. Will Pauling is consistently getting open and in the most important times, and you give him the ball in those moments.
If you've got one guy who can do that, you want to ride him all day long. And we've seen that in practices when they did some of the hurry up, move the ball type situations. Pauling was all over the field. It felt like making most plays that came his way. I know you mentioned the one that came off his hands, probably one he should have caught that ended up being intercepted. They gave the ball back to the first team offense, and then they went down and scored a touchdown anyway. But Pauling, to me, looks like a better player than he was last year. I don't know whether that will be reflected in the statistics. Wisconsin certainly hopes that there will be other guys that can step up, but without a doubt, Pauling Bryson Green has been a guy that Tyler has targeted consistently, and I think they've got a better connection and they can show that they've got an ability to push the ball down the field. I still maybe have some questions about some of those other guys and how consistently they'll be able to be playmakers, how consistently they'll be able to not drop passes, because I think that's something that has kind of crept up here in recent practices as well. But Will Pauling, you're right, still that dude.
And I still think that they are loaded at the slot position. I continue to believe that. We know what they have with Will Pauling. We know what we think they have in Tretch, even though it was just one game. He made he made a third, it might have been a fourth down grab on a little bit of an out that Van Dyke found him right on the sideline with a great throw in tight coverage for a first down. And then Kai and Barry Johnson had a couple of impressive plays, including one where he just, it was from Braedyn Locke and it was over the middle, and Owen Arnett was right there. He just did a little move on him and was gone. And you heard all those woos from the sideline. Yeah, I think they've got another one that's pretty special there. So those three, it's a loaded group right there in the middle. Three guys that I think can create space and get open on their own without necessarily needing to be schemed open.
Very much so. I think Tretch is one of those guys that needs to work on being more consistent from a pass catching standpoint. I just think of a couple opportunities that he had that were drops, and I know he talked about that when we spoke to him as a return man, but he's extremely dynamic and explosive. You just want to make sure that you can look the ball in, catch it, and then go make your move. And Barry Johnson, yeah, if he can take care of everything off the field and on the field, I think it will start to come together. The play you're referencing was one over the middle. It ended up being inside the 10-yard line. It was a really long gain, and he had a couple of those catches, even for a guy who's new to this program and still trying to adjust. He's flashing a lot of talent. And then on the outside, I think they're still working through some things. I've gotten some questions about Quincy Burrows. He has not participated in the live reps here for the last handful of practices, and so that's given opportunities to other guys. Chris Brooks Jr. is someone that continues to flash on occasion. He had a play where he caught the ball on the right sideline and a defensive back slipped. So that obviously made things easier, but Brooks took it in for a touchdown, 15-plus yard touchdown. He's shown some physicality, and he's gotten a lot more reps with the second-team offense. So there are a lot of players that they have that are potential options. But to me, the question is who can get closer to that level of the top couple of guys that you can rely on when these games arrive.
So the wide receivers made a bunch of plays today, but I think the one time that I saw Kenny Guyton as excited as he had been all practice was when Tretch blocked a guy on one of those little wide receiver. I think it might have been a throw to Chris Brooks, but it was over on the side, and he made a great block, and another guy over there had a great block, and it freed them up for a huge gain. Actually, it might have been Pauling that caught that one. I'm not exactly positive on that. Either way, he ran over there, giving Tretch a high five, and like it reminds me of something I heard the other day. No block, no rock. So like if you don't block, you're not going to get the rock. And I think that was a Matt LaFleur, something that he said earlier this week. And I think Wisconsin kind of has to be that same way. There are certain guys last year that I don't know were always bought in all the way into that idea. And we've seen in fall camp here so far that being the case.
They just look better overall at a lot of different positions, but you're right. I think sometimes you can get this reputation when you think of what this new offense is it's more of a finesse type of offense because you just think of it's air raid. They're going to throw the ball around, but there's still a lot of the same principles that Wisconsin had previously, and being able to block. And even if you're a small guy, you can spring someone on the edge, and it's going to make all the difference in the world. I also would say that I like Kenny Guyton's demeanor from afar when you watch him. And I know this is something that people talked about when he first got here, even the first time we had a chance to talk to him. Just a super positive dude who seems to consistently be uplifting the guys. He will be the first coach running onto the field to high five multiple players, even ones that aren't always at his position. And I think that has really resonated with this group.
I think so as well. A couple more things. Barrett Nelson was back in team drills today, and that allowed him to move into the starting spot at right tackle with Riley Mahlman still out.
Yeah, I mean, when he was healthy, I thought he'd be your top swing tackle, and he could be a swing guard too. He's obviously very versatile. So they're still rotating a little bit. Kevin Haywood has gotten some reps with the ones, but when Nelson's in there, it allows Haywood to go back with the twos at left tackle. They definitely have a handful of options there, but Barrett Nelson, when healthy, is absolutely going to be in the mix there.
I also enjoyed Emerson Mandel and Kerry Kadenko on this little bubble screen, just absolutely destroying Owen Arnett. It was, I mean, that's not really a fair fight there. A couple of big offensive linemen going against a safety like that, but that was another thing that drew a lot of praise or a lot of oohs and ahs from the sideline. And for a guy that never pass blocked actually in a football game, Emerson Mandel seems like he's coming along very, very quickly.
When I think of that two deep on the offensive line and who's thrown into the fire the most here this preseason, Emerson Mandel is right at the top. I mean, he's getting those 2 reps at right tackle. That is an extremely difficult job to have because they're rotating outside, inside linebackers all the time. And guys that are running with the twos are essentially starters. And so there are instances where he looks like a freshman, but physically he stacks up extremely well. And there's a lot to like about the young offensive linemen, even if you're not necessarily going to see them this season. But as Luke mentioned after Sunday, Mandel and Colin Cubberly, those guys are going to be in your 2 deep. And so is Kevin Haywood. If he's not a starter due to injuries, he's in there too. So there's a lot of talent in that 2 deep, and Mandel's certainly among them.
We had our first dust up that we've seen today. Taka Curtis and Katie Akamelli going at it. It was a skelly drill. It was not obviously 11 on 11, but Tackett threw Katie Akamelli to the ground, and Katie Akamelli had words for him, and one thing led to another. And one of the worst things you can do when the other person has a football helmet on is throw punches, and that's what Taka Curtis did. Landed him to the helmet. I don't know that it hurt Katie Akamelli at all, but he got obviously pulled off the field and had to do a lap. I have not seen a ton of that here. There was a lot more of it in the spring than I've seen so far here in fall camp.
Tackett will get after it, man. I think I still do wonder, though, what exactly his role is going to be when the season arrives, because it's really Jake Chaney and Jaheim Thomas has handled a lot of the 1 reps. Obviously, Christian Allegro will be involved in there as well. Tackett has largely taken 2 reps. We've seen Tyler Janze get not only 2 reps, but some 1 reps, and he started to emerge. And so I wonder exactly where or how Curtis will fit in a very deep and talented inside linebacker room. But when he's on the field, he's willing to throw it in there and occasionally go beyond.
Yes. Yeah. Go beyond that. It's just not smart. It's not smart, right? We can agree with that. We can agree on that.
I would want to save my bones in my hands from hitting helmets if possible. Yes.
Yes. One more thing. The greatest thing about this 1 versus 2 offense versus defense, and the same way the other way around, but the best thing about it is we get to see Xavier Lucas up against Wisconsin's best receivers on a regular basis, and he is more than holding his own. Especially there was this pass to Bryson Green where he came over the top and broke it up. Again, he continues to show us day after day that he's going to be a player.
Since he started getting the 2 reps, it's been noticeable every practice that he's making at least 1 play, 1 pass breakup. Great physicality for a true freshman, and I imagine one of those guys you're going to be seeing on the field in some capacity this season from that class of 2024.
Yeah, for sure. So Wisconsin will be back on the field on Thursday morning. Today is Wednesday. Thursday morning, and we'll be there. And they've got 3 more practices open to the media Thursday, Friday, and then they have a scrimmage coming up on Saturday morning. That'll be the final one that we get to see. And we're going to be back after all of them to break it all down. Jesse, thank you very much.
Thanks, Zach.
All right, there he is, Jesse Temple from The Athletic. You've been listening to The Camp.